Great, thank you so much. Welcome to Analytics Rockstar. You made it? Who's excited for the bash? Woo! Get loud, yeah, let's get loud. Just because you have headphones on doesn't mean they have to be quiet, all right? Let's get loud, Analytics Rockstar, yeah! All right, so for today, we have some really fun and important tips to share with you today. We have 3 fantastic Rockstar presenters for you. Let me kick things off. So we're going to start, make sure that you've got your Summit app prepared. We're going to have a few surveys, a few opportunities for you to ask questions. So just keep it handy. And so let's get moving. First of all, as a reminder, this is Analytics Rockstar, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And we have some great presenters. So let me introduce them for you. Our first presenter is Piermarco Burrafato. Come on up. Next, we have Chris Leyland. Come on up, Chris. And last but certainly not least, he's taking care of his crown from last year's Analytics Rockstar and defending it, trying to make sure that it remains in the Boller family. Give it up for Urs Boller. So if you haven't attended this session before, let's walk you through just a couple of our Rockstar rules. So first of all, it's competitive, which means that we have prizes. These guys don't know what the prizes are going to be, and neither do you, but they're fantastic. I'm kind of jealous. I'm really jealous. And each contestant is going to present 2 tips. We're going to go round robin style. So we'll have Chris, then Piermarco, then Urs. Then we'll have Chris, then Piermarco, then Urs. And we'll keep going, well, really just those 2 times. And then at the end, you'll vote on whose tips you like the best, and the winner gets the best prize of all. Like I mentioned, you decide the winner, and we're also gonna have Q&A with prizes. Really? This is not working? No? It's good? Good? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about our Q&A. First of all, in the app, you can ask questions, so you can use the Summit app to ask those questions. And still on their way here, they're in transit to the Excel house, are a bunch of copies of Adobe Analytics for Dummies, which I just wrote last month. And we'll be signing those copies for you and sending them out as soon as they arrive at the Excel house. So ask good questions, and if your question gets picked, then I'll take down your information and make sure you get a great copy. So to kick things off, let's talk a little bit about what the trophy is going to be. So first, all 3 contestants are going to receive a brand new, not even available in stores yet, we're going to have to pre-order this, an Oculus Quest. So all 3 of you are going to get this gaming, video game focused VR headset that doesn't require a laptop or anything. So give it up for the Oculus Quest, it's pretty exciting. Then the grand prize winner receives a bag from the Marriott, which is actually a brand new, still in the wrapping, iPad Pro. Ooh. So that's what the 3 of you are competing for. You ready? Yeah. All right. So round 1, kicking off soon. First up, we're going to have Chris Leyland from Skybet. And Chris, here's the clicker. Take it away.
Hey everyone, you alright? You hear me okay? Yeah, cool. So I'm Chris Leyland. I work as an analyst at Skybet and Gaming, and today I'm going to be talking to you about weekly, daily average comparisons, which isn't as boring as it sounds, but is actually really useful. So, not to boast, but I'm pretty sure you will all probably have seen something to this scale where something erratic happens off-site. Maybe there's a big event, Black Friday, and then you try to compare against it the week afterwards. You then end up with a figure like this. And I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to like a weekly meeting and you have to go, well, this marketing channel's up by 1,000%, and then this marketing channel's up by 1,200%, it kind of loses the edge a little bit. So today what I'm going to here to talk to you about is how we can make this outdated. That looks really dramatic, doesn't it? So what we're aiming to be able to do here is to be able to move from 4,000% over to 10.4%. The way we're going to be doing this is looking at the 4-week average prior to. So again, I think as a few of these tips I mentioned earlier on, these aren't prescriptive, so it's just more of a methodology. So feel free to adapt it to whatever metric, time period you're looking at. So the first step that we're going to be looking at here is applying a mean function to your metric. Here we're looking at visits, and I'd always recommend just excluding the include zeros as well. Secondly, we're going to create our comparison time period. So by that I mean, here we're looking at the previous 4 weeks. So anytime I log into Adobe Workspace, I'm now going to be seeing the last 4 weeks in this segment. And also the target time period being the previous week. And then a little bit of a slideshow there. Then lastly, all we need to do is throw this into a free-form table. This should hopefully give us a view something like this. And I can see the Skybet guy's looking a bit nervous. It's dummy data, don't worry. It's not actual data. So from here, we're then left with actual visits on the left-hand side and then average visits on the right. Meaning that quickly we can use a summary visualization to be able to say, this is how many visits we had over the last week, and then how does that compare against over the last 4 weeks average. Pretty simple stuff, but again, really powerful when it comes to those kind of like external business events that causes those kind of skews in your data. So, to go back over that, single period comparisons can fluctuate pretty rapidly and obviously not always within our control. Using averages allows for that consistency, meaning that we can take over that level of control and make sure that our reporting is normalized. And then lastly, this can be achieved in Workspace through calculated metrics and time periods. Things that are pretty simple, but when kind of used in conjunction, mean that you get a really robust reporting solution off the back of it. So that's my first tip. I'm now going to hand over to Piermarco.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Give him a warm welcome. All right. Good job.
Thank you, Chris.
So Piermarco is head of marketing analytics over at Elsevier and has a great tip to share as well. Piermarco, take it away.
Thank you very much, Eric. I am obsessed with growth, and today I want to share this passion of mine with you through my tips. So how do we account for growth? I'll tell you through 2 stories. The first story is the story of a startup that, like many startups originally, wasn't getting any traction in the market, but which later quickly, looking at the data, managed to gain product market fit. It's a story of an app called Bourbon, which was launched in March 2010. It was providing users with many features, so many possibly, that it wasn't gaining any growth in the market. So their co-founders looked at the data and found that while most features weren't being used, there was a small subset of the users which was very active and doing just one thing, which was uploading and sharing pictures. So they decided to scrap everything and focus solely on that use case. They made that process completely seamless and fast. And in October 2010, they launched Instagram. The second story is the story of an established company that already had product market fit, but they spotted an opportunity in their data to release a new feature to boost their growth. It's a story of Twitter, which for many years was used as a social network, but at some point it became clear that a new use case was emerging from the data. Users were using tweets to tweet companies about their complaints, and companies were responding to them. At some point that use case became so important that Twitter decided to improve its user experience, and in early 2016, they released direct messages on top of tweets. I told you about these 2 stories because they have something in common. In both cases, companies realized that there was a use case which was worth supporting or completely investing upon in order to boost growth. So how can we, through Adobe Analytics, boost growth like these companies did? I'm suggesting that we use user growth metrics. Last year, I've introduced some of these metrics during Analytics Rockstar. If you've missed it or you want to refresh it, head to my blog, analyticmastery.com. This year, I'm going to introduce the retention rate and the quick ratio. Combine that with behavior personas, each describing a unique, distinct way of using your product. So let's start with the retention rate. I used this identity last year to calculate new retained and resurrected, and I also used this one to calculate churn. By manipulating this one, dividing it up by the total monthly number of unique visitors, we obtain a new identity that says that retention and churn are complementary to each other, which means we can derive retention as 1 minus the churn rate. Again, everything is explained in detail in my blog if you want to review them later at your convenience. The next metric that we need, retention is great, but we need a metric to measure if our current user base is really growing. That metric is called quick ratio. It's the ratio of incoming users to outgoing users, or in other words, the sum of new and resurrected visitors this month divided by the churn visitors next month. Can be visually explained as the area above the x-axis divided by the area below the x-axis on this picture. So it's two opposing forces. A ratio equal 1 means that we're losing as many users as we've acquired in a month. A ratio below 1 means that it's really bad. We are losing current users. A ratio above 1 is what we want. We're growing. There are more users coming into our product than leaving our product on a monthly basis. Last step, you need to discover your behavioral personas. How do you do that? I suggest you use quantitative methods such as segmenting your user base through key events, properties, and dimensions. Best is if you can complement quantitative methods with qualitative methods, which will tell you the why you're seeing certain trends in the data, such as brainstorming who your personas might be, as well as, if you can, interview your real users and ask them how this fits into your, how your product fits into their life. Once you have identified all your personas, capture them in segments in Adobe Workspace, Analysis Workspace, and off you go. With these tools, you can now analyze growth like a rock star. So let me tell you how you do it. Let's start with the baseline growth, which means looking at the growth of all users lumped together. You will see that for this sample product, it has a retention rate by 40%. And a quick ratio oscillating around 1, which means this product has found market fit, but it still has a high churn issue. Shall we see if personas can help us fix that problem? Of course we do. Let's apply Persona 1 segment on this panel. And now we see something different. We see a better picture. Retention rate for Persona 1 is higher than the baseline, 65%. And though the growth outlook is not that impressive, it's still already better than the baseline. But where things turn completely, ladies and gentlemen, is when we apply the Persona 2 segment. In this case, look at it. It's got a retention rate by 80%, 2 times as much the baseline, and a growth outlook which is more intense and sustained than we've ever seen so far. So chances are, Persona 2 can help us fix the churn problem. To conclude, if you have found many behavioral personas, I recommend you put them all in one chart so you can see which one is the most engaged, in this case 4 and 6. And now it's up to you to decide what you want to do with these insights. But first, a caution note. Correlation doesn't imply causation. So make sure that you experiment and you validate that indeed it is the behavior of 4 and 6 which is driving engagement, not the other way around. And now you can decide, do you want to scrap everything like Instagram did, or do you want to improve the user experience of 4 and 6 so that as many users as possible will become successful personas. And obviously make sure that you're not doing that to the detriment of other personas, that you're not cannibalizing other parts of your product, and drive as many people as possible to convert and become 4 and 6. Thank you. I hand it over to Urs.
Thank you, Piermarco. Next up, we have Urs to defend his title as I knock down some water. Urs, take it away.
Thanks very much. Since I started using Adobe Analytics, I have a mixed feeling talking about processing rules. On one hand, they're really great. Or do you know any faster way to fix an implementation mistake? Just go to the processing rule and add a new rule and change the data. So easy. But you end up having a bunch of rules. And that's why I hate them. They're like a black box. I have no clue what the processing rules are doing to my data. We're sending analytic calls to Adobe Data Center. The data is going through the processing rules, and I have no clue what's going on. Well, I know. I have a simple table showing you which rules are affecting my data within Adobe Workspace. Simple rule. How I can achieve this? Set up a list prop with a delimiter. And in each rule, add this block of code. Basically, adding custom text at the end of your list prop. You end up, if you go to a normal, ordinary prop, with a long string. And thanks to list prop, it will show up as table. And just a classification to get the numbers back to some meaningful insights, you have a table showing you which rules are affecting your data. Do you see a page name that doesn't fit? Drag in the description, and you see which processing rule might have affected this data on each single hit. So it really brings you the black box into light. You get rules usage visibility. You can break down, and you even get, for your data scientists, a data feed hint if they look at raw data feeds. But that's not all. Thanks to calculated metrics, you can compare data from last day to today and add 2 columns to show which rules are new and which rules have been broken. Maybe need to be fixed, or you can delete the rule since it's not used. That's it. Get your processing rule inspector running in your own Adobe Analytics implementation. It's really useful.
Right. Thank you, Urs. How was that? Good first round? 3 great tips. Give it up for Chris, Piermarco, and Urs. Really, really good start. So we'll give you a couple seconds. If you do have questions about any of their tips, now is a good time to pull out your app, and you should be able to ask questions there. We'll have some time as soon as Urs, Piermarco, and Chris are finished with their second tip, so that we can answer them there as well. In the meantime, Chris, come on up here. And you, sir, are going to walk us through your next tip. Take it away.
I'm back. So, still Chris Leyland, still working at Sky Betting and Gaming. So, my second tip is very closely related to my first one. And it was just built off the back of the first dashboard that came off that first tip. So, rolling weekday averages. Obviously, working in betting and gaming, I'm pretty sure everyone in the UK is aware that Saturday tends to be a pretty big day for us. So when we tend to look at volumes, this is what we see. Meaning that if I was to look at the previous daily average over the last 4 weeks, we're going to be skewing things pretty radically. So as an example, if I looked at yesterday's data and we saw that we had 10 visits on site, I hope not, better not be 10, then in that case, we don't want to necessarily compare against a Saturday where we had 10,000. This little tip is essentially just a way to be able to get around that and just focus on the relative weekday and making sure that you get everything that's kind of just reflective of the accurate comparison. So, in essence, this is what we're shooting for. A very quick filter just to be able to show over the last whatever kind of time period. Again, this isn't prescriptive, so feel free to adjust accordingly, whatever kind of suits your company. This just means that we're only filtering down to the respective weekdays, so when we do compare against that, we're only looking at the relative dates. So again, really simple to be able to achieve, and again, looking at Urs and Piermarco's tips, I'm kind of out of my element. So what we're shooting for here is just, again, using the mean function to your metric. But the fun thing we're going to do here is rather than choosing a single time parameter, we're going to use a segment to combine multiple ones of these. So previously in the past, we just looked over the last 4 days. All we're going to do here is have 4 different ones that will say 8 days ago, 15 days ago, 21 days ago, and 29 days ago. Again, this isn't prescriptive. Add in as many as you want, just it will be time-consuming and manual to go through that. From here, all you need to do then is just create a free-form table as before, with the left-hand side column being the target date metric, and then your comparison date time on the right-hand side. So this is how it should look, with yesterday to the left, last 4 weeks, rolling weekday to the right. And then from there, we create a free-form table in a much similar fashion that we had beforehand, using visits, so the non-aggregated version of that, and then the aggregated version of that underneath the last 4 weeks rolling weekday. So as you can see, 69 wasn't quite 10 visits. I'll take it. So essentially all we're left with there is a single row partitioned by day to be able to say, this is how many visits we had yesterday compared against the last 4 weeks on that exact same weekday. And that's how we can get to that and make sure that data is normalized properly. So again, just to go back over it, average daily comparisons can be skewed. If you're comparing Fridays against Saturdays, particularly in an industry like mine, you're going to get some pretty wonky numbers, and that's we try not to shoot for. So using a segment to allow for multiple time parameters means that you can get around that pretty simply. And then lastly, using that method allows you to view the average performance of the last X number of occurrences of that day of week. Again, entirely up to you guys of how much time you have to invest in 8 days ago, 15 days ago, 21 days ago, and so on.
Keep going.
I had to remember that. I nearly got that wrong as well.
It's a lot of math.
I wrote it.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Give him a nice warm welcome. Nice, thank you.
Thank you. So, still Piermarco here, still obsessed with growth. In fact, my next tip relates to the first one. How can you find aha moments for your users? In other words, how can you find those features that your first-time visits experience that drive long-term retention and eventually has your users become your first-time visitors come back, discover the value of your product, form a habit, and finally become a current user? A while back, Facebook found that their aha moment was finding 7 friends in 10 days. So how can we find the magic moment for our users? I think this is a very fascinating subject. And possibly one that I cannot cover completely in the last few minutes I have left. But today I have a very practical and powerful tip for you, which is called behavioral cohorts. It's made by a combination of the new cohort tables by Workspace and the success event pathing. Here's how it looks. This visualization tells me that first-time users that saved an alert are 4 times more likely to be retained, to come back, than those that didn't and, for instance, only searched or viewed some content. How do you go about it? First step, you need to enable success event pathing. It's a very simple step. Your admin can do this for you. They will be happy to do that for you. In fact, my admin is here and he is smiling since the day I asked him. But make sure you provide them with meaningful events because you don't want to have noise in your data. Nice thing about enabling success event pathing is that once you do it, you get events in your flow diagrams. Step number 2, build a cohort and now drop the visits metric both in the inclusion criteria and in the return criteria. Then apply a segment at visitor level where visit number equals 1, so you're capturing first-time visitors. Then hit advanced, then hit custom dimension cohort. Finally, drag and drop the success event pathing and hit build. And boom, your cohorts are built. Your behavioral cohorts are built. Now, just pull a line visualization on top of it and make sure that you are hitting percentages. You are selecting percentages in your visualization settings. That will normalize all the curve, and you will be able to compare likes for likes, and you will see which cohort retains the best. As a tip in the tip, you may want to think of using dimensions other than the success event pathing. So you may want to explore other dimensions such as browser, like I'm showing now on screen, or country, which might give you more insights. To conclude, while I think it takes an art and possibly a data science to quantify your user's aha moment, the exact aha moment, I think this very simple and practical tool and powerful tool is phenomenal for you to start making hypotheses as to what might drive your people to see the value of your product upon their first time visit. Like I'm showing now on screen, for this product, face a filter search, look how incredible its retention curve goes, right? It even grows at some point. So again, the name of the game here is experiment. Make sure that it is that behavior that drives engagement, not the other way around. But once you validate that, make sure that you drive as many people as possible to that specific feature. Chances are they will get a magic moment too. Thank you very much. I hope you like my tips. And don't forget to vote.
Thank you, Piermarco. And last but certainly not least, we have a new guy. Oh wait, no, you've already been on stage. We have Urs. Do it again, Urs.
Still Urs Boller. Still no clue what's going on in Adobe Analytics, at least in my implementation. So there comes tip number 2. In fact, This guy could be me, working on a project, looking for the right props EVARs event, which I can use on my project. What was it? EVAR 1, prop 2, or event 3? Have no clue. In most cases, I go back on the live website, open debugger, and have a look what is being sent to Adobe Analytics. But imagine a table which you can drag to any project, looking at the landing page, showing you which EVARs, props, events you can use in your project, basically holding data. Or you look at the product page, showing product information as well as product events. Or finally, purchase event, showing you the relevant metrics and dimensions for your project. Whatever project you have, whatever data range you choose, just drag one single table to the project and see what data you have. What's the idea? Before sending data to Adobe Analytics, we add another string to the server call containing information about the other items on the server call. And thanks to this prop, we get a nice clean table. But there are not only 3 items you're sending to Adobe Analytics, maybe 10, 20, 30. You end up with a really long string, which is too long for list props. So here's the final solution. I defined a list of 1,500 items for each single item you can have on a server call. Encoded all items by base 64, just to get the numbers even smaller. So basically on my string, using the coding system, I can have at least 33 items and stay below 100 characters. So in your Analytics Tag Manager, you're doing 2 things. First, creating mapping array, just for a fast lookup. And second, you have the code which actually adds the information to your server call. Finally, we have the classification where you bring back the real names and numbers for your codes. I do not present the details because it would take more than an hour, and Eric asked me to stay below 10 minutes. So I wrote the whole blog post, which will be published right after the session at 5 o'clock on Jan Exner's blog page. We will spread the link, adobe.ly/Urs. Just have a look, it's all documented. You can copy and paste the full source code to your own tag manager, either DTM or Launch. Copy the code and get it up and running on your test site within 5 minutes. And on each server call, you had the additional information. And what you end up in reporting is this nice table, thanks to classification, which you can apply to any project, whatever data range you have. And you can add more classification for breakdown, like type, descriptions, or priorities, or whatever you want. But you are not sending only 3 items. There may be 10, 20, 30, even see 40, 50 items on each call. Having a big project with a lot of data might give you a big table. No. You do not need to classify each item. Just classify the important one. Everything else stays in the none bucket. So it's an easy table for everybody in the organization to use in any project. And just in case somebody needs more information, give them another expert classification where you add additional information about the other elements, like EVARs, props, events. And when they drag in this new classification to the same table, the new items will appear. I could talk another hour just what you can do with this data. Having this data in Adobe Analytics is really powerful. But Eric, I try to keep it below 10 minutes. We'll show you one bonus tip. You might say that you are not only interested in information getting in a single hit or server call or just looking at the product page. What happened before in the user journey? Has there been any searches, campaigns? What EVARs, props, events have you set before? Especially EVARs, since they are persistent. So what you're doing is adding a new classification for visit, adding a calculated metric, turn on linear and visit attribution modeling, and you will see all items that have been set in the customer journey before your project entry. In this test case, I can see the search terms, I can see error page information, or whatever happened before the user entered this. And playing around with calculated metrics, adding some calculation, you end up with a clean, nice table showing the end user what he can do, what is set directly on the pages he is looking at, or what is persistent in EVARs, and what might be used for the project. I strongly believe that this documentation needs to be done in every Adobe Analytics implementation. And just to give one more idea what you can do with this data. Just about 2 hours ago, Jen Lasser presented the Adobe Analytics Health Dashboard. Basically an Excel tool, getting all information down by API. You can use this, because in this table, Adobe Analytics will automatically show where you have anomalies without any Excel tool getting up and running. And you can make a chart of each single line and see what has been in the past. I will share the link to the blog post as soon as it's published under the Twitter hashtag Analytics Rockstars. Thanks a lot.